It's 4 a.m. and I can't sleep because the air conditioning stopped working, and since I live in Florida, it's shot up to over 80 degrees in my house right now, which is suboptimal snoozing temperatures. I'm basically taking the One Punch Man challenge, and I figured since I can't sleep, I might as well talk about something that's on my mind. You may see that I'm sweating right now. I'm feeling the heat, but that's nothing compared to the heat that all League of Legends professional players are feeling in the North American region. Now, I don't know about you, I can only speak for little old me here, but when I think of esports, the first game that pops into my noodle is League of Legends. That, for me, is the game that really popped off the esports scene and made it mainstream. Of course, I did watch MLG for Halo 2 and all of that, and of course a bit of StarCraft, but League of Legends is when I really got hooked in the space. And now, Riot Games seems beyond determined to ruin it. Like they're doing everything they can to put the LCS in the grave, which is wild. Now, I'm about 4 years sober from League. I was highly addicted from seasons 3 to 6, roughly 7, and that was a addiction harder to kick than heroin, I imagine. But I did it. And I still do keep up because I do really still love the pro scene of it. And to see everything that's happening in the space right now is more upsetting than the intro to Pixar's Up. It's very odd to see Riot unleashing this fury from the deepest pits of hell upon the LCS. They're basically waging a war on American soil with the NA region. Now, if you do keep up with League of Legends and the esports scene, you'll probably know that North America's been a little lackluster. They're not out there with the strongest competition on Summoner's Rift at the moment. But that doesn't mean that Riot needs to fucking slap them around for some reason. Now, this is actually a very deep situation with a ton of layers to the onion, so I'm just going to show you a quick screenshot that lays out some of the basics, and then I'm going to dive in a bit deeper. But this is just a general overview of what's going on. You can pause the video here to read all of this, but I'll just give you a quick nutshell breakdown. It all started in the Challengers League, which is fundamentally where players get developed into the top tier talent. You know, this is where players get to the big stage. They go through that to try and make it to the big stage where they're competing for all the clams, all the steamed ham. And there was some requests to change things around with how that whole system works. And Riot got a little wacko mode with some of the changes they wanted to implement. And a lot of what they wanted wasn't exactly satisfactory to the LCS Player Association. So the LCSPA, the LCS Player Association, eventually had to call for a vote among the LCS players, the pro players, to stage a walkout as a form of protest because Riot was unwilling to budge or reach any kind of compromise that would be favorable to all parties. So the majority of players voted in favor of the walkout. And this lit a fire deep in the soul of Riot where they were ready to draw their swords and go to battle. They got the fucking big guns out and were ready to put the kibosh on it. They got a big attitude about this situation. They were like Ed from Ed, Edd n Eddy when he got that rock in his shoe. They were livid. So, in response to the walkout, they shook their finger. They said, no, 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 no. You are going to be obligated to field players, which means every org would then have to get substitutes to play for them. Substitutes that would be pretty much committing career suicide if they accepted the role because they'd basically be crossing a picket line here. They'd be going against the striking players. They're going against the protest. So it's reputational suicide for anyone that would do it. It's a bad look for the orgs, and it's obviously a bad look for Riot. It's a lose, 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 lose across the board. This is a bigger losing record than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers before we got Tom Brady. This was nobody winning in this situation. But Riot was adamant, no, you will have to field players. And in order to try and make it easier, they decided to lift the requirement for the players they could field. They said it doesn't matter the player's rank, anyone can play for these teams, you just have to field them and pay them. But they said no more ranked requirement, meaning anyone of any rank could play for them. They could literally have their intern who's never touched League of Legends be their professional LCS player because Riot is forcing them to field somebody. Anybody with a fucking pulse. You could train your dog to go up and slap on your keyboard a little bit, and that would be a-okay by Riot because there were no requirements left for the substitute position. Fucking me, a gold superstar one-trick Yorick, could have been an LCS pro player this week by this new ruling because there were no fucking requirements. It's wild. Instead of trying to reach some kind of decision that's amicable with the LCSPA, they instead just said, alright, Wild West time. Absolute fucking chaos and pandemonium. We're opening Pandora's box. You all are forced to field substitute players, and we don't even fucking care if they've played the game before in their life. Doesn't matter. Just put someone out there with a heartbeat. Fuck it. And fuck you. They are just actually out here spitting in the face of all of the LCS players. It's pretty disgusting. Now, it's worth mentioning that not everyone thinks Riot is fully in the wrong for this situation, so I haven't seen Tyler One's clips on it yet, but according to this article, he seems to believe Riot actually made the right decision here with their decision to scrap the mandatory participation in the NACL. He calls them paycheck thieves and says that 90% of the players won't ever be good enough for the LCS, so it just causes the orgs to bleed money. Admittedly, I don't keep up with the NACL, any of that scene, so I can't really fully opine on just how effective it was. But according to the rest of the tweet that had the bullet points, apparently 50% of the current LCS players have been through the NACL, so it does seem like at least a lot of the talent for the LCS comes through it. But in the same tweet, it also talks about how expensive it is to field an NACL team. So there's just a lot of moving parts to this situation here, and regardless on where you stand for the effectiveness of the NACL and whether or not it should have ever been a mandatory requirement, I think everyone should be able to recognize the scummy behavior from Riot with their absolute refusal to compromise on anything. That's not uncharacteristic behavior from Riot, and I know Tyler One's had his fair share of criticisms against the company for their downright reluctance. They'll fucking stomp their feet and refuse to change anything. They just don't budge. And in this case, they're not even really negotiating with the LCSPA. And I think that is a huge problem. Again, it doesn't really matter where you stand so much on the NACL itself. The problem really does stem from Riot's complete refusal to even bother trying to reach some kind of satisfactory conclusion here. They seem far more willing to just completely wipe their hands with the LCS, just treat the LCS like a toilet seat, and just fucking wipe their ass with it like toilet paper. So the situation is developed further. They had another meeting today, and Riot Games fucking ulted. They let it all hang out. It was a base race, and Riot Games, they were well fed. They outright said that they are completely fine with just canceling the season if teams don't comply with Riot's parameters. They delayed it by 2 weeks, so they pushed it off an additional 2 weeks from right now. And if they still don't play ball with how Riot wants them to participate, they're just going to cancel the season, and that would make the LCS ineligible to be in the Worlds for 2023. Now, that's harsh. They ran it down mid with this statement here. This shit is brutal. If they don't do what Riot is asking them to do at the end of this 2-week period, they would be willing to cancel the entire summer season, and that would ruin the eligibility for the LCS to qualify for 2023 Worlds. Now, if you don't keep up with League of Legends, Worlds is the biggest stage. One of the biggest stage in all of esports, to be fair. It is huge. So by not allowing them to qualify there because of all this, that's a huge blow. Keep in mind how expensive it is to even be an organization in the League of Legends space. The LCS is not cheap. We're talking 8 figures. It is a very expensive endeavor, and these orgs have gone all in to be there. So this kind of threat is terrifying. That could actually just straight up ruin some orgs, outright. I'm sure there are sponsors dependent on these orgs being in League, for example. So there's a lot on the line for these orgs, whereas Riot can just kind of write it off as a loss. You know what? Whatever. We still got fucking billions here. So what? We'll take it. We'll take a bit of a loss on the LCS. Fuck them. They disobeyed us. They didn't listen to us, and for that they stepped out of line. We gotta punish them. Make an example out of them to all the other major regions. Like it's scary. And there's of course the LCS isn't the only region. It is a major region, but it's not the only one, of course. So I'm very curious how the other regions will respond to this because I would feel like they should also be a little concerned with how Riot's handling this. Where like if things aren't going swimmingly, Riot seems totally fine going scorched earth protocol and just lighting it all on fire, like with what they're doing with the LCS here. So I guess we'll see how the 2 week period goes. It seems like there's going to continue to be dialogue between the LCSPA and Riot Games to see if they can reach some kind of happy ending here. But as of right now, at 4 a.m., it's not looking too promising for the future of the LCS, which is just super sad. Because again, the LCS used to be a powerhouse. Like this was the esports scene. And to see where it's at today is crazy. And to see Riot so willing to just get rid of it, like cancel the season, is crazier. And I just wanted to talk about it a little bit because it's something that I've been thinking about a lot and following closely. So that's about it. See ya.